Okay. Okay. First, I want to go back to what Colleen was saying about CrowdStrike. Do your homework. CrowdStrike has its roots in Ukraine. It's a George Soros operation. We just paid them $30 million to put a Trojan horse inside our computers. I don't know if anybody in the legislature has any idea how this stuff works, but everything they do goes through CrowdStrike, and they can peel off anything they want. So, sorry about that news. Anyway, okay, so Liz asked me to talk about fascism, and she just gave She just gave a great example of how the word is bandied about. And one of the things I've noticed is that there's like a 0.1% of the population even knows what fascism is and where it came from. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to that, and then you'll know, and we're going to say, well, who's the fascist? Okay, we're going to ask that question. So for instance, she said, Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, she's being called a fascist. Then did you listen to the Prime Minister of New Zealand talk?
Yes.
Who's the fascist? Okay, let's go. We'll go back into that. So I thought this was great. I just threw this in at the last minute. I saw that today. The cartoon shows the guy from the Congressional Budget Office, CBO, walks in and he says to Biden, he says, "We ran the numbers, sir. Your student loan forgiveness will cost $500 billion." Biden says, "That's zero to you, fascist." Okay? What do they mean? So, here's another headline I just pulled off just before I came. It's just happening. The Biden administration wants federal government to be diversity equity model for the nation. So they're going to spend your tax dollars to push this DEI stuff, right? To do what? As we'll get into it, it's about the state, right? We'll get there. Fascism is state socialism. This is another example of what's happening to you, and nobody has any idea. They're calling Trump the fascist. He's the anti-fascist. I'm not sticking up for Trump, but I'm just saying, it's nutty, all right? So let's then take a look at things. So I decided the title for this one would be Communism's Fraternal Twin. Now, that's my personal take on it, but if I go back and I look through the history of it, we say, well, it's actually quite true, and we'll get into that briefly. So let's start. Let's have some definitions so we're all on the same page now. We hear the term totalitarian, okay? That means characterized by a government in which the political authority exercises absolute and centralized control, okay? So if somebody in Washington is complaining about decentralization, they're pro-totalitarian, right? Right? We're going to do it all the same. The whole country's got to do this, okay? Authoritarian means characterized by or favoring absolute obedience to authority as opposed to individual freedom. Now, I want to tell me, you see the HRC up there, you know what that means the next. It says, for authoritarian rules, it requires passive and a submissive population. Who's the HRC? Hillary Rodham Clinton. She said that in that recorded whatever it was, charade, in 2016, right before the election. That was a deplorable speech, okay? Hillary Clinton is saying we need a passive and submissive population, okay? Mussolini couldn't have said it any better, or Lenin, for that matter, of Stalin. Okay, libertarian or classic liberal. Liberal is another word that gets misused. Like you'll hear things about, well, a liberal democracy. Well, that's a good word, in the sense. Originally, liberal meant Thomas Jefferson. It meant John Locke. It meant the Enlightenment. That's what a liberal really was. But somewhere around 1920, the socialists took over the mantle of that and changed it. So if you hear libertarian or classic liberal, that means advocating maximization of individual rights and minimizing the role of the state, which is kind of opposite of fascism. Okay? At the bottom, progressive or modern liberal, basically the same thing, favors collectivism, right, and centrally controlled government, opposed to individual liberties. If you know anything about the progressive movement, you know that's all about killing the Bill of Rights. Bingo. Just read Woodrow Wilson, and you'll know he's the first progressive, kill the Bill of Rights. Okay? There's no room for that in their world. So anyway, it's the opposite of classic liberal. I just throw it up so you'll know. I'll typically use the term libertarian and progressive, then I don't have to worry about, the word liberal. So, okay. Now we're going to play a game. It's called Do You Believe? There's 5 questions. All right? Everybody's got a hand with 5 fingers, unless there's potato farmers here. Anyway, So I'm going to ask you a question, and you either have 1 point or 0 point. There's 5 questions. Okay, so I made this up. If there's any progressives in the room, you'll be able to do it because it's all in one hand. Right? Now, if the answer, if it's either a 0 or a 1. So if it's a 0, keep your fist clenched, or that finger, right? Every time you got a 1, pull the finger up like that. Okay? There you go. Now, you're not going to need any fingers, trust me. All right, I am going to play the part of the communist because Mel's not here. I was going to pick on Mel, but he's not here. So I'm going to vote as a communist, and I'll show you why I'm voting as a communist when we're done. Okay, here's the first question, okay? Do you believe that you exist to serve the government, or do you believe that you exist for your own sake or to serve God? Okay? So, it's up to you guys, right? Yeah, I know what you know, right? Yeah. Anybody got a finger? So, I'm sorry. Okay, so keep track of that. Second question. If I can push the button. Do you believe in centralized government control of the economy? Or do you believe in economic freedom and free markets? Okay? This is looking good, right? Look at this Tim Allen. Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right. Next one. Do you believe that individual rights should be allocated by the government to suit the government, or that you have natural, inalienable rights outside of the government? Yep. Okay. There's a pattern here. You're catching on? Anybody here shows me a finger, I'm going to beat you up. Anyway. Okay. Number 4. Only the government should be allowed to bear arms. You get 1 point. Or the citizens have a right to keep and bear arms.
Absolutely.
All right. I knew where this was going to go, by the way. In front of the audience. Okay. And this one, this is really big, and any mother out here and father. Do you believe the nuclear family is a threat to the government? Or do you believe that the nuclear family is the basis of civilization? Okay? Now, did anybody get anything other than a fist of zeros? Okay, I'm the communist, okay? Call me Vlad. I'm the communist. I got 5. Now, you know what's funny about this? That's a fascist test.
Wow.
You notice the fascists and the communists agree? And I'm going to show you the only place they don't agree. Okay? Very shortly. Remember that.
First time I've ever been able to get a
So here's a big question. Why does the progressive left accuse everyone else of being fascists? Why? Well, first of all, they can get away with it because nobody knows what fascist means.
They're projecting.
Okay? Ever hear of Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals? If you haven't read it, you should. By the way, he dedicates the book to Satan, so good Christians will know this. Anyway, one of his rules, and there's a bunch of them, says, accuse your opponent of what you are doing to create confusion and to inculcate voters against evidence of your guilt. In other words, accuse the other guy of doing what you're doing. Takes the pressure off you, puts it on him. That's what any four-year-old would do in the schoolyard, right? Exactly. That's why they're doing it to you, and they're getting away with it. Because nobody's speaking up. And I'll tell you, the Republican Party, nobody's saying boo. How stupid are they? You know? So, anyway. Whoops. Okay, now we're going to talk about the roots of fascism, where it comes from. And this will go quick, we'll get you on board.
Oh, it's this
Okay.
is good.
Well, once again, I can't push a button. Okay, Karl Marx, we all know Uncle Karl, right? Okay, we'll talk through these. Then there's this guy named Lenin, or Vladimir Ilyich Ulyanov. The Russians like to have the names like Lenin, but I guess nobody really knows what that really means, like big river flows, something like that. Stalin, that means man of steel. Okay, so Stalin. Okay, and the last one's Mussolini. A lot of people associate fascism to Hitler, and Hitler's a Nazi. A Nazi is a fascism with some extra goodies attached. Okay, but Mussolini is really the guy that came up with fascism, and he uses the word fascia, meaning that bundle of sticks. It goes back to Roman times. The sticks, you put them together, okay? Because what he wanted was a strong nation. So that was where that came from. That's where the word fascist came from. The same as your plantar fascia on your foot. It hurts a lot of times. All right, so going through this, let's look at Karl Marx, okay? Father of socialist theory, okay? He was in the class struggle. He theorized that the world was going to end up moving in a natural revolution in this class struggle between the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. Proletariat would be the guy who goes off to work every day. Okay? Somebody else's factory, whatever. The bourgeoisie is interesting because you have petty bourgeoisie. That's in the French form of petty, meaning small. So that would be small farmers, anybody that owns, small shopkeepers, anybody that owns their own business. Okay? Is part of the bourgeoisie, as well as anybody that runs a business, anybody that has a bigger business, right? They're all bourgeoisie, it's just some are petty bourgeois, petty, right? And others are, I guess, bourgeoisie grande, I don't know how they say that in French, something like that. All right. And he thought the world was going to end up with this dictatorship of the proletariat. Now this means nobody's in charge, right? I'm just saying. But anyway, well, there will be somebody in charge. But he has this dictatorship of the proletariat. So magically, the bourgeoisie and everybody that knows how to run the show is going to disappear off the face of the planet, naturally. Okay? So he's not talking about violent revolution. We have Lenin for that. Okay? And then, well, let me back up one time. Socialism then means the end of private ownership, a government monopoly on everything. Okay? So there is no such thing. You've heard the guy from the Klaus Schwab from the World Economic Forum say, 10 years from now you'll own nothing and be glad?
Be happy.
Be happy? Yeah.
Happy.
Okay. We'll get to the World Economic Forum here. Okay, Lenin. I call that Marxism with malice. Because what Lenin said is, this natural revolution of the proletariat is just not happening. So we're going to push the issue. So we're going to have professional organizers. Who do we know as organizer? Barack Obama? Anyway, I'm sorry, I didn't say that. So professional revolutionaries, that's their only job. Don't some of those work for BLM? Anyway, so what they're going to do is, what he wants to do is push the issue. All right? And remember, Stalin was just a continuation of Lenin. Lenin died in like 1925 or something like that, 24, and Stalin took over and then liquidated every competition he had. That being said, Lenin wanted to liquidate the bourgeoisie. They're not going away on their own. So we're going to either deport them, some were lucky and were deported, the rest were sent to the gulag or just shot on the spot. And this is absolutely true. Ever watch Dr. Zhivago? Look at what's happening. Most of those people are going to end up in the gulag. Gulag is a Russian acronym. It basically means the labor camp system. And nobody went there to get any work done. They went there to die a very miserable death. If you've ever read Solzhenitsyn, Gulag Archipelago, I suggest you do if you got 3 years to read the book. It's huge. Anyway, okay, and what he said here, we will have totalitarian rule by those elite revolutionaries. So there's a small group of people. Anybody, what percentage of the Soviet population was a member of the Communist Party? If you say 1%, you're 2x high. 0.5, 1 out of 200 people was a member of the Communist Party. Okay? Everybody's a serf on the plantation. Road to Serfdom, Hayek, if you ever read it, that's what he's warning you about. Everybody's a serf on the plantation. That's where we're going. That's my fear. But anyway, so you're going to have these professional revolutionaries are now in charge, and you're going to have a police state to suppress all opposition. The FBI, the KGB, the NKVD, right, working together, and brutal suppression of any opposition. Right? And rule by fear, basically, because there was a lot of good communists that ended up in those camps. Stalin he said, just give me 3,000 people from that village, send them off there. We need to keep the fear going. That's literally what he did. And that's where communism's always going to go, because it can't work on its own. So in order to keep it in play, you have to keep the fear. Anyway, so Mussolini came up with fascism, and he wanted to tweak communism. Here's why. Mussolini looked at the Russian Revolution, 1917, right? Red October. And he watched, and Mussolini's power came to him. He got power in the early 20s. He looked at what was happening in Russia. And what happened was ugly. They had people starving to death everywhere, not just being murdered, but just starving to death. What they did to the kulaks, wiped out people. But what he saw was that communism was literally destroying the economy. The reason was because there's nobody there with ownership, right, to get anything done. They killed the bourgeoisie. Nobody's left except a bunch of professional revolutionaries. Could you imagine a bunch of kids from Harvard today trying to take over the economy? Well, that's what they had, right? A bunch of people with useless educations that were training, like the BLM lady says, I'm a professionally trained Marxist. Good for you. Anyway, he saw what happened. So he says, we don't want that to happen because we want Italy to be a strong country. We don't want to kill our economy. So he saw the damage communism did, but he realized this. Instead of killing off the bourgeoisie and state ownership, he said, let's allow private ownership under government control. Now there's the key, government control. You can only exist if the government says you can exist in private. But there is an incentive there. So what you find with fascism, and I'll show you this example later, fascism is economically sustainable. Communism is not. Every country that went the communist road, the ones that are still there, think about it, Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, they're nothings, really. They're literally nothings. They may be dangerous, they may have some military capability, but economically they're nothings. All right? So then fascism is still anti-free market. Though even though they allow private ownership, they're not pro-capitalist. And a lot of the things, you look on Wikipedia and they'll say, fascists are pro-capitalist. No, they're not. They might be pro-corporatism. Yes, that's the melding of government and corporations, kind of like Google and the government. All right? But they are anti-free market. There is no free market. And they retain the police state. So everybody's familiar with the Gestapo, right? So Hitler just learned everything from Stalin, really. They kind of learned from each other, but until the Hitler attacked Soviet Union, those guys were buddies, So that's where the roots of fascism lie, in Karl Marx. Both Hitler and Goebbels both had a bust of Karl Marx on their desk. Okay? So when they say something like, well, left wing is communism, right wing is fascism, we're going to explore that. So what I want to do here is to compare the systems real quickly. If you look at across the top, communism, fascism, and the American founding, okay? And down the left side are different dimensions of governance, economy, etc. So let's look at governance. Communism and fascism are both what? Totalitarian, authoritarian. American founding of the people, classic liberal or libertarian, okay? Economy, government ownership for communism, private ownership by government permission under fascism, slight difference, okay? American founding, private ownership, private control, okay? And I'll see if it says separation of economy and state. We know about separation of church and state. Well, American founding is separation of economy and state, separation of bank and state, and we've wandered from that a great deal. Anyway, religion, okay? Now, repression under communism, fascism, repress or exploit, where you can use it to your advantage, and a little bit. So the Mussolini and the Vatican, had a little going on there. And under the American founding, religion's an enshrined right. Okay, right to bear arms, you guessed it, not allowed, enshrined right. And speech, suppression, enshrined right. So the interesting thing, if you're comparing communism and fascism, there's the difference. Right? Communism, government owns everything. Go to Cuba, government owns everything. Okay? Oh, they're changing a little bit now. And private ownership under fascism, but government permission. All right? Remember that because there's a test later. Well, not really. Okay, but here's the most important point I will make to you tonight. You look at those two, the Marxo-fascist roots of American progressivism. Again, if you don't understand the progressive movement, and there's nothing progressive, there's no progress in it. It's all about those two columns. That's the assault you're under every single day. Yet, they get away with calling you a fascist if you're on the far right column under the American founding. How is it they can confuse fascism and the American founding? They know what they're saying, but they know most people out here don't know and aren't fighting about it and don't care.
It's indoctrination.
Yep. So, if somebody calls you a fascist, all right, here's a couple of responses you can ask. You can say, are you accusing me of being a socialist? Right? You are a fascist. How about the lady in Italy, Melania, right? They call her a fascist. She said, are you accusing me of being a socialist, a Marxist? Right? Fascists are socialists. Are socialists. So if they're calling you a fascist, are you saying I'm a socialist? But I'm for free markets. You got that one wrong, buddy. How about if you're accusing me of, are you accusing me of being anti-free speech and anti-religious freedom? This is just a ditto of what you've already seen. So if somebody calls you a fascist or some politician you like, or as much as possible, right? Are you accusing Donald Trump of being anti-religious freedom or trying to be anti-free speech? There's none of that, right? I mean, you might or might not like Trump. I mean, let's be honest. But the accusations are wrong. They said about this Melania. Well, she made a speech about the nuclear family, the importance. What did they do right away? Oh, you're a fascist. But wait a minute. Who wants to take over the kids? The fascists. Right? She's totally the opposite of a fascist, unlike that kook in New Zealand. All right? Here's another one. Are you accusing me of being anti-Second Amendment and anti-gun? First thing the Nazis and the communists do is take all the guns. Right? There's a pattern. And the last one, they'll say, or second to last, are you accusing me of supporting a police state of the FBI? I changed this at the last minute like that. That's where it's going, right? And then the last one, are you accusing me of agreeing with Hillary Clinton? Are you accusing me of agreeing with Obama? Right, Hillary Clinton, Hillary carried. That was she wanted. And remember, we need a suppressed population. Hillary Clinton, Obamacare, right? How about Biden? What he's trying to do now? It's all fascism. You're gonna force people to subsidize somebody else's student loans. You're gonna spend trillions, force me to spend trillions on windmills and solar panels. It's pure fascism, right? So, and are you accusing me of agreeing with Hochul? I threw that last minute. I figured we needed that. So I mean, you can see if you're responding to somebody who's going to call you or somebody else you favor, and you're on the right side, American founding there, you need to come back to them. I do this all the time, by the way, in the Journal and the Observer. I do this all the time. Anyway, okay, so things to ponder, and then we're going to turn it over. Our communism, what we call the left, and fascism, what we traditionally call the right, are they really opposite ends of the political spectrum? If they're opposite ends of the political spectrum, then where do I put a libertarian who believes in rights? Here's totalitarian, authoritarian over here, my left hand, communism. And if fascism is a right, totalitarian, authoritarian, where on this spectrum do I put a libertarian who's anti-totalitarian and anti-fascism? There's no place for them. It's a bogus description of the political landscape. Now you could come up with any number of dimensions. We call it n-dimensional space for people who went to college. Anyway, what I'm saying is you're being fed nonsense. Total nonsense. Another thing, who in the U.S. is practicing fascism? Well, I just gave you a list of them. Hochul's a great example, but everything Biden's doing, right? He's forcing you to pay taxes and spend money the way he wants to do it. All right? This goes back to the Convention of the States, right? You said it, right? Exactly. Inside your boundaries. Does the CCP, that's Chinese Communist Party, actually implement communism? Remember that chart I showed you? The difference between communism and fascism? Up until 1979, they were a communist country. The Chinese Communist Party owned everything. Okay? And where were they economically? They were third world. They were nothing. There was a guy, you might remember the name, who went over in 1979 to visit the Chinese. His name was Milton Friedman. They invited Milton Friedman over there to help them get their economy going. And they were very proud to say, look, we've got jobs programs. We've got thousands of people digging these ditches and building irrigation, and they've all got shovels. And Milton Friedman said, well, if it's a jobs program, how come they're not using spoons? Okay? The message got through to the Chinese government. Now, though there's no political freedom there, what they did is allow private ownership, and you see what happened over there? So it exploded. But don't let anybody get away with saying, oh, look how great the communists are doing in China. They're not communists. They're fascists. By that one little difference. And you can see why fascism is economically sustainable, communism is not. Here's another one. Is the U.S. a free market economy? We want to say we're land of free and a home of the brave, right? Everybody here that wore the uniform is proud, oh, we protected America. Well, you didn't protect America, we didn't protect, I'll take blame too. You protect America from what happened to us. Is there a free market in energy?
No.
Is there a free market in healthcare? Nope. Is there a free market in when you decide I don't want to get cable TV or satellite? No, it's all regulated. They tell you what you can have. You don't have competition of the different things out there, right? It's all central controlled. Much of our economy is already fascist. Like it or not. Corporatism, if there's corporate welfare involved, all right, crony capitalism, and of course the highest level will be corporatism, which is kind of like what you got with Google and those guys, or Meta, whatever they call themselves now. Okay, next question. What are the two wings of the Democrat Party? This should be easy. I'll tell you. On one side, you got Bernie Sanders and AOC and a bunch of other lunatics. Okay? And on the other side, you got Nancy Pelosi, Hillary Clinton, Biden, a bunch of other lunatics. Right? There's two wings. One is a communist wing, and one is a fascist wing. And the only fight between them is whether or not the government's going to take over ownership of everything, or they're going to keep playing the corporatist game with fascism. Right? So think about that. That's the two wings of the Democrat Party. I think I took the one down about, I took the one down on the Republican Party. What are the two wings of the Republican Party? One wing is a libertarian wing. There's a Rand Paul type wing. Okay? And Ted Cruz kind of that. Traditional conservative, constitutional conservative. And the other wing then is corporatist. I tell you, there's some rhinos out there that I'm pretty sure just think fascism is a great idea too. They don't say it, but bingo, so the rhinos. And that's the problem we got to fix. So, last question. Is that ironic that the progressives are accusing you of being a fascist? Who's the fascist? It ain't you guys, guarantee you. So, conclusion. Communism and, now, this is in my humble or not so humble opinion. Communism and fascism are fraternal twins. They're born of the same mother, whose name was Karl. Must be a transgender thing. And anyway, they're born of the same mother, a slightly different father. Right? Okay? The bulldog beat somebody up the stairs, and that's what happened. I don't know. But, and here's my statement now. Beware the merging of communism and fascism within the CCP and the WEF. What they're realizing is if you want world domination, these guys are going to get together. And that's already happening. Okay? World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, absolutely fascist. All he's got to do is figure out how he's going to deal with China. Okay? But the one thing they all have in common, and I've said this, I'll say it again, the Democrats in this country, I don't want to say party. The progressives in this party want what China has. And what is that? 100% control of the population. Digital currencies, social credits, the whole deal. Okay? Make no mistake, there isn't a single Democrat out there, and there's a dearth of Republicans who are opposed. There's many Republicans who are in that fold right there. Okay? We know them as rhinos. So that's what I would say is beware and keep your eye on these people. Remember, you'll own nothing and be happy about it. Okay? Want to take the Nazi test?
Sure.
Okay, we'll do the Nazi test. Do you believe? I wasn't going to do this, but he said yes. All right. Do you believe people should be judged primarily by their race? Or do you believe people should be judged by the content of their character? Which one is it? We're pretty much with Martin Luther King here, right? Yeah, because he said we should judge people by the content of their character. Direct quote. Now, different fascists and Nazis. I said Hitler just added something. He added racism to the mix. Mussolini was about nationalism. He didn't really care where you were. He wanted a strong Italy. Okay? And they're typically, and I don't blame them, anti-globalists, right? At the time. Watch out, because the World Economic Forum is going to become globalized fascism. So fascism used to be restrained to a nationalist viewpoint. Not anymore. You'll hear that out there. Oh, nationalist. No, World Economic Forum has gone global. Okay, so they want fascism on a global scale. But what Hitler did is he had to have a common enemy, so he just told anybody that's not a pure Aryan, we're going to liquidate you. And we know where that ended up. So all Nazis are fascists, but not all fascists are Nazis. Not giving a pass to fascists. Okay? Now, what's the main premise of critical race theory? Number one premise. You judge people primarily by their race. You don't judge anything else. You must judge people by their race. Read the book on critical race theory. There's a number of good ones out there. You judge by their race. Who judges by their race? The Nazis. So who's pushing the critical race theory? The Nazis. If they're pushing critical race theory, they're in there with the Nazis. Use that against them. Say it. You have nothing, you're no different from Adolf Hitler. You said, I got to judge this guy because his skin is black, or his skin is brown, or his skin is white. I got to judge him that way.
Yeah.
Right? So,
And who's the judge?
well, and there you judge by what? The content of someone's character. Right?
No, but in the critical race theory.
No. Well, the judging, great question. The judge in critical race theory. Critical race theory goes by the moniker theory with a capital T. Okay? It's not a theory, it's a religion. So you can't question it, because if you question it, you're told, well, you're just ignorant. Okay? So only a few elites are allowed to really understand it, why it's there. So you have to accept the dogma of it. We said it, it's true. If you disagree, you're ignorant. Right? So there is no judge other than theory. All right? And anybody, I think Ken was going to talk about postmodernism, the next speech a little bit.
Manipulation.
Yeah, something like, anyway, and that's where this comes from, but that aside. Okay. Now, whoops, well, I just killed it. Anyway, that was it. Didn't mean to do that, but I did. That's the end of the thing. Remember, somebody's calling you a Nazi, put up the mirror and don't take it. Hit them right back. Well, wait, what? Am I the one that wants to get rid of guns? Am I the one that wants to put people in camps? No. Am I the one that wants to judge people by their race? No. Throw it back at them. Okay? All right, thanks.
I told you he was really smart. He has a lot of information.